That pregnancy test sure as hell wasn't mine. That much was obvious. I found it stuffed deep in the trash can in our master bathroom, buried under a mess of crumpled tissues and an empty shampoo bottle, like someone had tried to hide it. And yet, there it was, clear as day. 2 solid pink lines. Positive. The second I pulled it out, my hands froze. I just stood there, staring at it, my brain scrambling to make sense of what I was looking at. Brianna hadn't said a word. Not one damn word. And why would she? We weren't trying for a baby. Hell, she'd been keeping me at arm's length for months, always too tired, too busy with work, always needing space. One excuse after another. But now, this? Proof. And not just of a pregnancy. No, this was proof of something far worse. I could feel the anger tighten in my chest, squeezing the air right out of me as I stood there, gripping that test like it had the power to burn. I knew my wife well enough to know she wasn't careless. She was calculated, always thinking 3 steps ahead. If she let this slip, it wasn't because she'd made a mistake, it was because she never thought I'd find it. Or maybe she was just arrogant enough to believe I wouldn't put the pieces together. I didn't confront her. Not yet. That would have been too easy. Brianna was an expert at twisting things, turning the tables until somehow, I was the bad guy. If I went at her without hard evidence, she'd have me second-guessing my own damn reality by the time we were done talking. I wasn't giving her that power. So, I did the only thing I could. I put the test back exactly where I found it, carefully rearranging the trash to make sure it looked untouched. Then I walked out of that bathroom like nothing had happened, even though my whole world had just cracked open. By the time I sat down at the kitchen table, my hands were still shaking. I pretended to scroll through my phone, barely paying attention, just listening for the sound of her footsteps upstairs. When she finally came down, fresh out of the shower, hair still damp, she didn't even glance my way. Just poured herself a coffee, settled in at the counter, and started scrolling through Instagram like it was just another morning. I couldn't believe it. She had the nerve to act like everything was normal, like I hadn't just uncovered the biggest betrayal of my life. It took everything in me not to snap right then and there, to grab that damn coffee mug out of her hands, smash it against the wall, and demand the truth. But I held back. This wasn't the time. Instead, I forced a smile, kept my voice steady, and said, "Looks like you slept well. Long day at work today?" She barely reacted. Just glanced up at me with an unreadable expression and shrugged. Same old. Meetings, deadlines, the usual. Her casual tone made my stomach twist. She wasn't just lying, she was smooth about it. Effortless. If she thought I was some clueless fool who wouldn't notice the cracks in her story, she had another thing coming. That night, sleep wasn't an option. Not because I was unsure of myself or second-guessing what I'd found. No, I was too wired, my mind running in overdrive. Brianna was playing a game, and if I wanted to stand a chance, I had to figure out the rules before she ran circles around me. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening to her slow, even breaths as she slept beside me, completely oblivious to the storm she'd just set in motion. I wanted to believe there was an innocent explanation, some way this all made sense. But deep down, I already knew the truth. By morning, I had a plan. Start small. Watch her. Look for the little cracks, the inconsistencies, the slip-ups. Let her think she was still in control. People like Brianna get sloppy when they think they've already won. At breakfast, she kept up the act, same as always. Smiling. Laughing. Even kissed me on the cheek, like she hadn't been avoiding me for months. Like she wasn't keeping secrets. It was insulting. A sick little show, meant to keep up appearances. But I wasn't fooled. Not anymore. I played along, smiling at the right moments, laughing when I was supposed to, but my mind was locked in on her. Every glance, every movement, I was watching. And it didn't take long to notice something off. She wouldn't let go of her phone. Normally, she left it lying around, on the coffee table, the kitchen counter, wherever. But today? It was practically glued to her hand. Even when she went to the bathroom, she took it with her. That alone wouldn't have set off alarms, but the amount of time she was spending in there sure did. 15, 20 minutes at a time. Way longer than usual. When she came out for the third time that morning, I kept my tone light. Everything okay? You've been in there a lot today. For just a split second, she froze, barely long enough for most people to notice. But I did. Then, just as quickly, she recovered, letting out a casual little laugh. Yeah, just some stomach issues. Probably that sushi we had the other night. Bullshit. We hadn't had sushi in weeks. I nodded, acting like I bought the excuse, but inside, my suspicions only grew stronger. If she was lying about something as small as this, what else was she covering up? Later that day, after she left for work, I decided to dig deeper. I'd never been the type to snoop before. Never felt the need to. But this wasn't paranoia. This was survival. I started with the trash. Every piece of it. I hated myself for doing it, but that didn't stop me. And sure enough, my gut had been right. Buried beneath the usual junk, I found another clue. A crumpled receipt from a boutique in the next town over. Dated 2 days ago. Luxury candles. Silk lingerie. Men's cologne. I stared at it, my pulse hammering in my ears. Those things weren't for me. That much was obvious. So who the hell were they for? And why? The pregnancy test. The secret shopping trip. The endless late nights at work. Piece by piece, the puzzle was coming together, and I hated the picture it was starting to form. That night, I decided to test her. We were sitting on the couch, half watching some brainless reality show, when I tossed it out there casually. So, who's the cologne for? She flinched, just a little, but enough for me to catch it. Her head snapped toward me, her eyes flashing with something between confusion and panic. What are you talking about? I pulled the crumpled receipt from my pocket and held it up. This. From Tuesday. I didn't realize you'd gone shopping. For a moment, she looked like a deer caught in headlights. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Then, just as quickly, she composed herself, letting out an easy, almost amused laugh. Oh, that? It's for my boss. His birthday's coming up, and the team chipped in for a gift. I didn't think it was a big deal, so I didn't mention it. It was a solid lie, quick, believable, just vague enough to keep me from pressing further. But not good enough. I forced a grin, playing along. Nice of you to take the lead on that. I'm sure he'll love it. She exhaled, relaxing back into the couch like she'd dodged a bullet. She had no idea. She thought she was in the clear, that I hadn't caught on. But I wasn't just suspicious anymore, I was certain. This wasn't about confronting her yet. This was about making sure that when the truth finally came out, she wouldn't be able to twist her way out of it. Brianna had secrets. And I was done giving her the benefit of the doubt. The next morning, after she left for work, I crossed a line I never thought I would. I followed her. It wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. Her late nights, the constant excuses, the quiet shift in the way she carried herself, it had all been too much, too obvious. I needed to see for myself where she was really going. I waited down the street, parked behind an old pickup truck, just far enough that she wouldn't notice me. At first, everything seemed normal. She backed out of the driveway in her sleek white SUV, one hand on the wheel, the other wrapped around her usual morning coffee. She looked like the picture of a put-together professional, off to another busy day at work. But I wasn't buying the act anymore. I kept a safe distance, trailing her downtown, fully expecting her to drive straight to her office like she always claimed she did. But she didn't. Instead, Brianna veered off course, taking an unexpected turn that led her to a small, tucked-away cafe on the outskirts of town. My pulse kicked up a notch as I found a parking spot a block away, far enough to stay unnoticed but close enough to keep my eyes on her. She stepped out of her car, and that's when the first real gut punch hit me. She was dressed way too nice for a regular workday, wearing a fitted dress I'd never seen before, paired with sleek heels that clicked against the pavement with every step. This wasn't some casual coffee run. She walked into the cafe with an air of confidence, like she'd been there plenty of times before. And within minutes, I found out why. A man joined her. Tall, put together, dressed in business casual, moving with the kind of effortless confidence that made my blood simmer. He slid into the seat across from her, and just like that, my worst suspicions started solidifying into reality. They leaned in close, talking, laughing, wrapped up in their own little world. And then, I saw it, her face lit up in a way I hadn't seen in months. That easy, radiant smile, the one she used to reserve for me. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. A part of me wanted to storm in there, flip the damn table, and demand answers right then and there. But I forced myself to stay put. I couldn't lose my head, not yet. I needed proof. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone and snapped a few photos, zooming in just enough to capture their cozy little scene. They sat there for over an hour, sipping their overpriced lattes and sharing a pastry, laughing like nothing else in the world existed outside of that cafe. And then came the final nail in the coffin. When they finally walked out, I followed at a distance, watching as they headed back to their cars. The man reached up, gently brushing a strand of hair from Brianna's face before leaning in. And she let him. She didn't pull away. If anything, she lingered, smiling up at him like he was the only person who mattered. I felt sick. Furious. But more than anything, I felt betrayed in a way that sent a deep, ugly ache straight through my chest. Watching her with him, so at ease, so comfortable, was like getting punched in the gut over and over again. But I couldn't let the rage consume me. Not yet. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I drove home in silence, my mind racing. Who the hell was he? How long had this been going on? And just how much longer did she think she could keep me in the dark? I didn't have all the answers. Not yet. But I knew one thing for sure, Brianna had underestimated me. And when the time came, she'd regret it. That evening, she waltzed through the front door like nothing had happened, a bright smile on her face and takeout bags in her hands, playing the perfect, doting wife. It was almost comical. She set the bags down on the kitchen counter and leaned in, kissing me on the cheek like she hadn't just spent her morning giggling over pastries with another man. I got your favorite, she chirped, pulling out boxes of barbecue ribs and mac and cheese. Figured we could have a nice dinner together. You've been working so hard lately. I forced a smile, keeping my tone easy. That's thoughtful of you. Thanks, Mel. She beamed, her eyes sparkling with self-satisfaction. It made my stomach turn. She really thought she had me fooled, that I'd just eat my ribs, nod along, and play the part of the doting husband while she carried on with her charade. But tonight? Tonight, I wasn't just pretending to be clueless. I was laying the groundwork. Over dinner, I watched her closely. The way she overcompensated, filling the silence with small talk, tossing out random questions about my day, cracking jokes about her boss's incompetence. She was performing, keeping up the act. I played my part, matching her energy, laughing in all the right places, even throwing in a story about an annoying coworker. The more at ease she became, the more confident I felt about my next move. After we finished eating, I gathered the plates, moving around the kitchen like everything was normal. She leaned against the counter, scrolling through her phone, completely unaware that the walls were slowly closing in. She thought she was still in control. But the game had only just begun. That I wiped my hands on a dish towel, keeping my movements slow and deliberate before tossing out a casual, "So, how's work been lately? You seem busier than usual." She didn't even look up from her phone. "Oh, you know how it is. Same old grind. Deadlines, client meetings, the usual." I nodded, leaning against the counter. "Must be tough, juggling everything. Late nights, early mornings. Gotta say, I'm impressed." That got her attention. Her smile faltered, just slightly, before she caught herself. "It's not that bad," she said, her tone a little too breezy. "Besides, I'm doing it for us, right? Building our future." I tilted my head, pretending to think it over. "Right. Like this morning, you had that coffee meeting, didn't you?" For a split second, she froze. It was barely noticeable, but I caught it. The way her grip tightened around her phone, the flicker of hesitation in her eyes before she forced out a light laugh. "Oh, yeah. Just some networking thing. Nothing exciting." I crossed my arms, my voice calm. "Huh. That's interesting. You never mentioned it before. Networking sounds cozy." Her smile thinned, her eyes narrowing just enough to let me know she was on edge. "Ethan, what's with the third degree? It was just a work thing. Why are you making it sound weird?" I raised my hands in mock surrender. "Not at all. Just making conversation." She studied me for a second, trying to read me, trying to gauge whether I knew something. After a beat, she shrugged and turned her attention back to her phone, muttering something under her breath about me being paranoid. But I wasn't paranoid. I was precise. That night, after Brianna went to bed, I stayed up, flipping through the photos I'd taken earlier. Each one was a blade, cutting through the last shred of doubt I had. Her easy, glowing smile. The way she leaned in close to him. The way she let him brush her hair back, the way she didn't pull away when he kissed her cheek. It was all there. Vivid, unshakable. She had no idea I was putting the pieces together, bit by bit, building a case so airtight she wouldn't be able to slip through the cracks. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was overwhelmed with anger, I had passed that stage. I was planning. Brianna had spent months weaving her little web of lies. She had no clue I was about to burn it all to the ground. She thought she was untouchable. Thought she was the smart one. That would be her biggest mistake. The next morning, I knew it was time to stop playing defense. Watching and waiting had served its purpose, but I needed more. Real answers. I wasn't going to sit back and let Brianna control the story anymore. It was time to take back the narrative. And to do that, I needed leverage. While she was at work, I sat down at her laptop. Brianna wasn't exactly a tech genius. Her passwords? Laughably predictable. A few quick attempts, and I was in. I wasn't proud of what I was doing. But pride didn't matter anymore. The truth did. Her inbox was revealing, to say the least. Among the usual flood of work emails, one name kept popping up. Derek R. The emails weren't explicit, but they didn't have to be. The playful tone. The inside jokes. The repeated meetings scheduled outside of office hours. Derek wasn't just a coworker. He was the guy. The man from the cafe. And then I found her calendar. Neat. Meticulously organized. Meetings, project deadlines, dinner reservations. And one appointment that stopped me cold. Friday, 3 p.m., Dr. Carlson, prenatal checkup. I stared at it, the words blurring together as my brain tried to process what I was seeing. Prenatal checkup. She wasn't just lying about being pregnant. She was planning her pregnancy behind my back. The betrayal hit like a freight train, but I didn't let it take me down. I didn't let the rage take over. Because as much as it hurt, this was my opportunity. This was my smoking gun. The one thing she couldn't twist, couldn't talk her way out of. But I wasn't ready to confront her. Not yet. Because when I did, there'd be no escape. Not yet. Not until I could bring it all down in one final, devastating blow. Later that day, I turned my focus to the next piece of the puzzle, Derek. His email signature listed his company and title, which made digging into him almost too easy. A quick search, and there he was, Derek R., senior consultant at some high-end firm. Polished. Professional. Married. 2 kids. Perfect. That little detail was a gift. Because now, I wasn't just dealing with Brianna's lies. Derek had his own mess to lose, too. If he thought he could walk into my life, wreck my marriage, and go on living his picture-perfect existence without consequence, he was about to learn just how wrong he was. By the time Brianna got home that evening, I had already begun setting the stage. She walked through the door, looking drained and distracted, her heels clicking against the hardwood as she tossed her bag onto the counter. "Hey," she said absent-mindedly, rifling through the fridge for a bottle of water. "How was your day?" I smiled, keeping my voice easy. "Not bad. How about yours?" "Busy." She hesitated, her head still buried in the fridge. "Yeah, the usual. Meetings all day. I'm wiped." I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "Anything interesting come up?" My tone was calm, steady. She straightened up just enough to glance at me before shaking her head. "Nope. Just the same old grind." It took everything in me not to laugh. The way she lied, smooth, effortless, like it was second nature, almost made me admire her audacity. "Almost." "Glad to hear it," I said, forcing a smile. Then, casually, I added, "By the way, I was thinking of heading out Friday afternoon. Got some errands to run. That okay with you?" Brianna barely looked up. "Of course. Do whatever you need to." "Perfect." She had no clue that I'd seen her calendar. No idea that I knew exactly where she'd be. As I watched her settle onto the couch, scrolling through her phone like she didn't have a care in the world, a strange sense of calm washed over me. Brianna thought she was untouchable. But she was wrong. So very wrong. This wasn't just about catching her anymore. It was about making sure she never forgot what happens when you betray someone who trusted you. Friday arrived, and I was ready. Brianna left that morning just like any other day, dressed for work, laptop bag slung over her shoulder, moving through the motions like she didn't have an entire double life hidden beneath the surface. She kissed me goodbye, all smiles and routine, like nothing was out of the ordinary. I smiled back, waved her off, and then got to work. By 2:30, I was parked across the street from the clinic listed in her calendar. The building itself was small, unassuming, tucked between a pharmacy and a dental office. I wasn't entirely sure what I was expecting, but deep in my gut, I knew this was the moment where everything would unravel. I waited in my car, eyes locked on the entrance. Women filtered in and out, some alone, others with partners. It was a steady flow, an ordinary day. Then, at precisely 2:58, I saw it. Brianna's white SUV pulled into the lot. She stepped out cautiously, glancing around as if checking to see if anyone was watching. Like she knew damn well she had something to hide. And then I saw him. Derek was already standing by the entrance, wearing a crisp, pressed shirt, slacks, and the kind of smug ease that made my blood boil. He was holding a takeout coffee like this was just another casual Friday. Brianna spotted him instantly. And just like that, her entire demeanor shifted. Her face lit up. It was the same look, the one she used to have for me. She walked right up to him, and they embraced. Not a quick, friendly hug. Not something that could be brushed off as innocent. No, this was lingering. The kind of touch that spoke volumes about what they really were to each other. I clenched the steering wheel so hard my fingers ached. This was it. Proof. Watching them walk into that clinic together was like a nail in the coffin. They were in this together. And they thought they were untouchable. But they weren't. Once they disappeared inside, I made my move. I didn't go through the front doors, not yet. I wasn't ready for that kind of confrontation. Instead, I circled around the side of the building, searching for another way in. Because when I did finally face them, it wasn't going to be on their terms. A delivery door near the back had been left slightly ajar, probably for staff, and I took the opportunity, slipping inside without a sound. The hallway was dim and sterile, lined with generic office doors and faded medical posters, reminders of routine checkups, flu shots, and healthy pregnancies. My pulse hammered in my ears as I moved quietly, following the faint murmur of voices down the hall. Then I found them. A door was left slightly open, just enough for me to see inside without being noticed. There they were. Brianna sat comfortably in a chair, her hand resting on her stomach as the doctor flipped through a chart. She was smiling. Laughing. And Derek? He looked every bit the doting partner, nodding along, engaged, asking questions like this was the happiest moment of his life. My blood boiled. I wanted to rip the door open, march in there, and expose them both for what they were, liars, cheaters, frauds. But I held back. This wasn't the time. Not yet. Instead, I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone, hitting record. Every word. Every gesture. Every glance. All of it was captured in crystal clear detail. Evidence. Unshakable. Undeniable. When I was sure I had more than enough, I slipped out of the clinic as quietly as I had entered. My heart was pounding, my hands shaking, but my mind was sharper than ever. Back in my car, I played the footage, watching them over and over, every second fueling the fire inside me. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. This was about humiliation. About obliterating the little fantasy world they had built behind my back. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I knew exactly what I had to do. Brianna was going to pay for what she'd done. Not just to me, but to herself. And Derek? He wasn't walking away from this unscathed either. The calm before the storm. The weekend rolled in like a slow-building storm, quiet, but heavy with an unshakable tension. Brianna, blissfully unaware, carried on as if nothing had changed. She smiled. She laughed. She even suggested we go out to dinner Saturday night, like we were just another happy couple looking for a night out. I played my part, the picture-perfect husband, nodding, agreeing, keeping my face unreadable while inside, I was setting the stage for something she'd never see coming. She picked an upscale Italian restaurant downtown, the kind with dim candlelight, overpriced wine, and white tablecloth service. She wore a deep red dress I'd never seen before, paired with heels that matched perfectly. She looked stunning. It only made the anger simmering beneath my calm exterior burn hotter. She was playing the role. Pretending. Acting like the wife she hadn't been for months. And I let her. For now. The first strike. Halfway through the meal, her fork twirled absent-mindedly through strands of linguine. That's when I struck. I swirled the wine in my glass, keeping my voice even. You know. I've been thinking a lot about our future. Her smile flickered for the briefest second before she recovered. Oh? What brought that on? I leaned back in my chair, my expression neutral. I don't know. Lately, you've seemed distracted. Like something's been on your mind. I figured maybe it was time we talked about it. She blinked, caught off guard. Distracted? What are you talking about? I've just been busy with work. You know that. I tilted my head slightly. Work, I repeated, my voice thoughtful. Right. And all those late nights at the office. The networking meetings. The sudden business trips. That's all just work. Huh. Her grip on her fork tightened. Knuckles turning white. Ethan, I don't know what you're trying to say, she said carefully, but it's starting to sound like you don't trust me. I smiled, leaning in just enough for her to feel the shift in energy. My voice dropped, low and deliberate. Oh, I trust you, Brianna. I let the words hang in the air for a second, then continued, slow and sharp. I trust you to always look out for yourself. To cover your tracks. To believe you're smarter than everyone else in the room. I watched as the blood drained from her face, her mask slipping for the first time. But here's the thing, I reached into my pocket, pulling out my phone. I didn't even have to unlock it. The thumbnail of the video was enough. Brianna froze. And for the first time, she looked afraid. I held up my phone, letting her get a good, long look. Watching the color drain from her face, watching her world crack and crumble in real time, it was almost satisfying. Her lips parted slightly before she hissed, low and sharp, "What the hell is that?" I tilted my head, my tone just shy of mocking. "Oh, come on, Brianna. You know exactly what it is." Her eyes flickered with panic as she darted a glance around the restaurant, but I wasn't about to let her slither her way out of this. "I followed you," I said, my voice soft, controlled. "Dangerous. I saw everything. The clinic. Derek. The cozy little chat with the doctor. You've been busy, haven't you?" Her breathing grew unsteady. Her hands curled into fists against the linen tablecloth. "Keep your voice down," she snapped in a whisper, her tone sharp, clipped. I leaned in, my voice dropping to a whisper that only she could hear. "Why? Afraid someone might overhear how deep your betrayal goes?" She opened her mouth to argue, but I wasn't done. "Let me guess," I continued. "You were planning to pin the baby on me, weren't you? Play the perfect wife, let me play the doting husband, all while sneaking off to see him whenever you felt like it. Or was he supposed to stay in the shadows? A dirty little secret you thought I'd never piece together?" For the first time in months, Brianna looked powerless. And it was intoxicating. I leaned back, savoring the moment, watching her carefully constructed facade crumble in front of me. "Here's the deal," I said, keeping my voice calm, measured. "Lethal. I have everything I need. Photos. Videos. Emails. Everything." She swallowed hard, but I pressed on. "So, you have two choices," I continued. "One, you come clean. Right here, right now. We put all the cards on the table and figure out where we go from here." Her breath hitched. "Or two," I said, pausing just long enough to let the weight of my next word settle, "I walk out of this restaurant, and by the time I get home, Derek's wife will have every single piece of evidence in her inbox." I watched her flinch, her face twisting into something between fury and fear. I repeated, "What's it going to be?" For the first time, the real Brianna was on display. Not the polished, charming version she showed the world. Not the poised professional. Not the smiling, doting wife. No. This was the cold, calculating liar who thought she could control everything. "You wouldn't dare," she hissed, her voice shaking with barely contained rage. I let out a slow, satisfied breath and leaned back in my chair, a smirk curling at the edges of my lips. Try me. Brianna sat there, frozen, her perfectly curated composure unraveling with each passing second. The candlelight flickered against her now pale face, her once perfect red lipstick smudged at the corner of her mouth, like the pressure of the moment had physically crushed her. She opened her mouth, closed it, then glanced around, like she was desperate for an escape route. But there wasn't one. Not this time. She exhaled shakily, barely above a whisper. You don't know what you're doing, Ethan. Her voice was sharp, biting. Desperate. This is my life. You can't just. I cut her off, my tone still calm but now edged with steel. Your life? I let out a quiet laugh, shaking my head. Funny. I thought it was our life, Brianna. But clearly, you've been building something else on the side. I folded my arms, letting my words settle. So don't you think it's time I got the full story? She narrowed her eyes at me, her hands trembling just slightly as she set her fork down with controlled precision. Her voice came out through gritted teeth. Fine. A pause. Then, a slow, bitter exhale. You want the truth? Her expression twisted with something ugly. Here it is. She looked me dead in the eyes. Yes, I've been seeing Derek. Then she shrugged, like it was nothing. Like it meant nothing. But it's not what you think. I let out a laugh, loud enough that a few nearby diners turned their heads. I didn't care. Not what I think. I echoed, shaking my head. You're joking, right? I leaned in, voice low and steady. Deadly. Brianna, I followed you to the clinic. I saw you with him. I watched you sit side by side, playing the happy couple while the doctor went over your pregnancy. I scoffed. You're having his child. For God's sake, what part of this am I misunderstanding? I expected her to crumble, to plead, to try and spin some last-ditch excuse. But she didn't. Instead, her expression darkened. The panic in her eyes flickered out, replaced by something colder. Calculating. Like a predator backed into a corner. You don't get it, she said, voice tight, measured. Dangerous. She tilted her chin up slightly, a smirk almost touching her lips. Derek, he's different, she said. He understands me in ways you never could. She let the words sink in before twisting the knife deeper. You've been so boring, Ethan. So predictable. Her lips curled into something cruel. I needed more. There it was. The knife in the chest. And she knew exactly what she was doing. She wasn't just trying to protect herself anymore. She was trying to hurt me. And worse? She was enjoying it. I sat back slowly, nodding as the weight of her words settled in. My voice was low, cold. Boring? I tilted my glass slightly, watching the deep red wine swirl inside before meeting her gaze again. Is that what this was about? Predictable? I repeated, my voice low but edged with disbelief. Is that what this was about? You got tired of the man who supported you, who built a life with you, and decided to go play house with someone else? All because you were bored? Her expression twisted with frustration, her voice rising despite her earlier attempt to keep things discreet. You're twisting this, she snapped. I needed something different, something exciting. And don't act like you're some perfect saint, Ethan. You've been distant, wrapped up in your own little world for months. I let her words hang in the air, watching her, letting her sit in the weight of her own excuse. Then, slowly, I leaned forward, locking eyes with her. You want to talk about being distant? My voice was quiet, controlled, but razor sharp. How about you shutting me out for months? Lying to my face? plotting to make me raise another man's child? Is that exciting enough for you?" Her face turned red, not with embarrassment, not with guilt, but with anger. But this time, she didn't respond. She couldn't. Because there was nothing she could say to justify what she had done. I reached for my phone, tapping the screen with calculated ease before holding it up. The screen glowed with the video from the clinic. "You see this?" I asked, my tone eerily calm. She swallowed hard, her eyes darting to the screen, then back to me. "This is my insurance policy," I continued. "If you so much as try to twist this conversation or feed me another lie, it goes straight to Derek's wife. And trust me, I'll hit send without a second thought." Brianna's mask cracked. Her bravado crumbled. Her lips parted slightly as she whispered, "You wouldn't." I smiled, cold and sharp. "Try me." She sat there, stunned, her fingers gripping the edge of the table like it was the only thing keeping her from completely falling apart. "You thought you could play me, Brianna," I said, my voice turning to steel. "You thought I'd never figure it out. But here we are." I leaned back, letting the silence stretch, watching as her world unraveled. "So, here's what's going to happen." I kept my voice even, unwavering. "You're going to tell me everything. Every single detail." I tilted my head slightly, watching her squirm. "And then? You're going to start thinking about how to make this right." I let the finality of my words sink in before delivering the final blow. "If you don't, Derek's life explodes. Your reputation burns to the ground. And this fairy tale you thought you could have? It ends in flames." Her breath hitched. "Your move." Brianna stared at me, wide-eyed, her face frozen in fear. For the first time in months, she had nothing to say. I stood up, sliding my phone back into my pocket. "Take your time, Brianna," I said, straightening my jacket. "But don't take too long. You're on borrowed time now. And I'm not feeling particularly generous." Without waiting for her response, I walked out. She didn't follow me. She didn't call my name. She just sat there, drowning in the realization that she had lost control. The cold night air hit my face as I stepped outside, and for the first time in a long time, I felt something I hadn't in months. Control. Brianna had played her hand. Now it was my turn. The reckoning begins. When I got home, I didn't wait for Brianna. I poured myself a drink, sat at the kitchen table, and began writing out the final steps of my plan. She thought the dinner confrontation was the climax. She had no idea what was coming next. Her lies. Her betrayal. Her arrogance. All of it was about to collapse. By the time she came through the door, her heels clicking against the hardwood, I was ready. She hesitated when she saw me still sitting there, calm, collected, drink in hand. But then, like clockwork, her mask slid back into place. The practiced smile of someone who thought they could still salvage control. "You walked out on me." Her voice was sharp as she set her purse on the counter. "That was humiliating, Ethan." I took a slow sip, savoring the burn before setting my glass down. "Good." I met her gaze. "Get used to it." Her jaw clenched. "Are we really doing this?" she asked, crossing her arms. "You've made your point." "Yes, I made a mistake. But I'm still your wife. We can fix this." I let out a low, bitter laugh. The kind that makes people flinch. "Fix this?" I repeated. "Brianna, this isn't a broken vase. You didn't make a mistake." I set my glass down with a deliberate clink. "You lied. You cheated. And you tried to trap me into raising another man's child." I leaned forward slightly. "There's no fixing that." Her expression hardened. The mask was slipping. She straightened her spine, arms still crossed. Fine. She exhaled, slow and cold. You want to end things? Go ahead. But let's not pretend you're some innocent victim here. Her voice sharpened, her eyes narrowing. You've been distant for months, Ethan. You shut me out. I tilted my head slightly, considering her words. And then I smiled. Because now? She was grasping at anything to shift the blame. And it was too late. The breaking point. You stopped trying, she shot back, desperation creeping into her voice. Maybe if you'd paid more attention, none of this would have happened. There it was. The deflection. The gaslighting. The shameless attempt to shift the blame onto me. But I didn't bite. I pushed my chair back and stood up, my full height towering over her as I met her glare head-on. Funny you say that, I said, my voice dangerously calm. Because I've been paying plenty of attention. I took a slow step toward her. Like when you skipped out of work to meet Derek. Another step. Or when you bought him that cologne and tried to pass it off as a team gift. I paused, letting the silence hang between us before delivering the final blow. Or my personal favorite, when you walked into that clinic with him for your prenatal appointment. Brianna went pale. For the first time, I saw real fear in her eyes. She parted her lips, scrambling for words, for an excuse, but I wasn't done. You know, I continued, pacing the kitchen now, my voice steady, almost conversational, I wasn't planning on getting messy. I thought maybe I'd just leave. Let you deal with the fallout on your own. I turned to face her, locking eyes. But then I thought. No. I let the word sit there, heavy. That's too easy. Her breath hitched. You don't get to walk away from this like nothing happened. Her voice was barely above a whisper. What do you mean? I stopped pacing and pulled out my phone, holding it up so the glow of the screen illuminated my face. I mean, I said, tilting the phone so she could see, I have everything. The photos. The videos. The emails. I took another step toward her. And guess what? My voice dropped to a lethal calm. Derek's wife is one click away from seeing all of it. Her eyes widened in horror. Ethan, no. You can't. I let out a small chuckle. Oh, I can, I said, cutting her off before she could spew another lie. And I will. Unless. She clutched her arms, her fingers digging into her own skin as she tried to keep her composure. What do you want? She finally whispered. I let the silence stretch for just a moment, making sure she felt every second of it. Then, I delivered my terms. First, I want the truth, I said, my tone sharp. All of it. No more lies. No more games. Her throat bobbed as she swallowed. And second? Her voice was barely there. I took a slow breath. I want you out. Her entire body went rigid. Pack your things, I said coldly. Move in with Derek, or crawl into whatever hole you want. But you're done here. This is my house, and I'm not sharing it with you for one more second. Tears welled in her eyes, but I felt nothing. You're being unreasonable, she choked out. We can work this out. That? That made me snap. I slammed my palm down on the counter, making her jump. Unreasonable? My voice rose for the first time. I took a slow step forward, my presence swallowing the space between us. You lied. You cheated. You tried to trap me into raising another man's child, I seethed. Then, I let the final nail sink into place. This is your doing, Brianna. Not mine. The silence between us was deafening. So, I said, my voice returning to an icy calm. Pack your things, or I send everything to Derek's wife. Your call. For a moment, I thought she might fight back. But then, the fire in her eyes flickered, and died. She knew. She'd lost. Without another word, she turned and walked upstairs, her heels clicking softly against the hardwood. I stayed in the kitchen, listening as she moved around our bedroom, the soft rustling of clothes, the zip of a suitcase. It wasn't over yet. Not by a long shot. But for the first time in months, I felt something shift. Brianna had underestimated me. And now? She was paying the price. And as for Derek? His reckoning was next. The next move. Brianna was gone by morning. No goodbye. No note. Just packed her bags and slipped away like a thief in the night. I stood by the upstairs window, watching her car pull out of the driveway, a strange mix of anger and relief rolling through me. The house felt different without her. Quieter. Almost hollow. But that emptiness? It was better than the suffocating weight of her lies. Now? It was Derek's turn. I'd spent the night drafting a carefully worded email. Christine. That was her name. Derek's wife. I'd seen it on his social media, tucked neatly beneath perfectly curated family photos, smiling wife, 2 happy kids, golden retriever in the yard. She had no idea what her husband had been up to. But that was about to change. The email was simple. Direct. I attached the photos. The video from the clinic. The flirty emails. No embellishments. No commentary. Just facts. The evidence spoke for itself. I hovered over the send button, taking a slow breath. Then, without hesitation, I hit send. Derek had walked into my life thinking there wouldn't be consequences. He was about to learn just how wrong he was. The fallout begins. Before hitting send, I took one last look at the folder of incriminating files. The photos. The videos. The emails. Everything they had tried so desperately to keep hidden. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about justice. They had built their little fantasy world on a foundation of lies. And now? It was time to tear it down. With no hesitation, I hit send. Immediate consequences. The fallout was instant. Within the hour, I had a response. Christine. Her email was a storm of shock and devastation, gratitude laced in between the raw pain of betrayal. She hadn't seen it coming. She thanked me for telling her the truth. I could almost hear the devastation in her words, the betrayal cutting her just as deeply as it had cut me. But sympathy? There was none left in me. Not for her. Not for Derek. And certainly not for Brianna. Later that day, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. I answered, already knowing who it would be. Derek. His voice crackled with panic, his words coming in sharp, biting barks. What the hell do you think you're doing? I leaned back in my chair, my voice calm. Controlled. Cleaning up a mess, I said simply. A mess you helped make. You had no right. I almost laughed. No right? I cut him off, my tone dropping to something ice cold. You slept with my wife. You lied to your own. And you think I don't have the right to call you out on it? I let out a breath. Spare me. Silence. I could almost hear the gears in his head turning, scrambling for an excuse, an angle, an escape. But I wasn't about to give him one. Let me make this very clear, I continued, my voice even, lethal. If you or Brianna so much as text me, if either of you so much as breathe in my direction, I take this public. A pause. I've got more than enough to ruin you, Derek, I said, savoring every syllable. Your wife. Your job. Your perfect little life. I let the weight of that settle. It all burns. Silence. And then, pathetic defiance. You're a real piece of work, he spat. But the fight had already left his voice. No, Derek, I said smoothly, leaning forward. That's you. I'm just the guy who won't let you get away with it. Then, without waiting for a response, I hung up. A slow wave of satisfaction washed over me as I set the phone down. Derek might have thought he could intimidate me. He had just learned the hard way that I wasn't the type to back down. Reclaiming control. That evening, I poured myself another drink and stepped onto the back porch, the cool night air brushing against my skin. I stared out at the yard, my yard. The one I had worked so hard to build. The anger was still there, simmering beneath the surface, but it wasn't chaotic anymore. It was controlled. Directed. Brianna and Derek had tried to destroy me. But in the end, they had only destroyed themselves. I knew there would be more fallout in the days ahead. Brianna would try to spin the story, twist the narrative to make herself the victim. Derek would scramble for damage control, trying to hold his life together with both hands. But it didn't matter. I had the upper hand now, and I wasn't about to let go of it. For the first time in months, I felt free. The aftermath. The days that followed were a whirlwind of consequences. Christine, Derek's wife, sent me a final email. Short. Direct. And filled with raw emotion, the final chapter. Christine's final email was short, direct, and brutal. She told me she was filing for divorce, thanking me again for exposing the truth. But she didn't stop there. She made it very clear that she hoped Brianna and Derek got exactly what they deserved. And honestly, so did I. Brianna's last attempt. As for Brianna, she tried to reach out once. A single, pathetic text. Can we talk? I stared at the message for a long moment. Then, I deleted it. There was nothing left to say. She had burned every bridge, and I wasn't about to rebuild it for her. Let her face the consequences. Let her run to Derek or whatever rock she wanted to crawl under. She wasn't my problem anymore. Reclaiming my life. The silence in the house felt different now. Not hollow. Not suffocating. Peaceful. For the first time in years, I started focusing on myself. I picked up my guitar again, something I hadn't done in ages. Started running in the mornings, letting the cool air clear my mind. Reconnected with old friends, the ones who had always wondered why I married Brianna in the first place. The weight of her betrayal still lingered, but it didn't define me anymore. It was just a scar. A reminder of what I had endured. And what I had overcome. Letting go. One afternoon, while cleaning out my office, I stumbled across an old photo of Brianna and me. Early in our marriage. Smiling. Carefree. A version of love that felt a million miles away now. I stared at it for a long moment. Then, without hesitation, I fed it through the shredder. That chapter? Closed. I wasn't the same person anymore. And I had no intention of looking back. Their downfall. As for Brianna and Derek, I heard through mutual acquaintances that their relationship didn't last. Whatever spark they thought they had burned out fast, crushed under the weight of guilt, shame, and the destruction they had caused. Brianna moved to another city. Derek's reputation at work took a massive hit after Christine aired their dirty laundry. Poetic justice, if you ask me. Lessons learned. If there's one thing I've learned from all of this, betrayal doesn't just break you. It rebuilds you. Stronger. Smarter. Unshakable. I wouldn't wish this experience on anyone. But in a strange way, I'm grateful for it. It forced me to see things clearly. To shed dead weight. To finally prioritize myself. To anyone reading this. If you're stuck in a toxic situation, wondering if you should stay. If you're fighting for someone who doesn't value you. Don't. Walk away. Hold your head high. And let the people who betray you drown in their own mess. Because trust me. There's nothing more satisfying than watching them crumble. While you rise.